to the Politics Hour starring Tom Sherwood. I'm Kojo Nandi. Tom Sherwood is our resident analyst. He's a reporter for NBC4 and a columnist with the current newspapers. Tom Sherwood, welcome.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you. Also joining us in studio is Jack Evans. He's a D.C. council member. He's a Democrat representing Ward 2 council member. Evans, welcome.
I'm glad to be back again.
If you have questions or comments for council member Evans, by the way, we're leaving the door open so he can leave early.
I'm here for the hour.
Us at 800-433-8850, 800-433-8850. If you have questions or comments for council member Evans, you can also send email to kojo@wamu.org. You can go to our website, kojoshow.org, where you will see a live video stream of this broadcast. And Jack Evans, our question for Tom Sherwood this morning is, but will he be receiving any royalties? Because opening in October at RFK Stadium is something called Scream City. It's an attraction with skeletons and creepy-looking dolls and actors hiding inside, and it's obviously named after a book you may or may not remember called Dream City.
And one of the last people remembers that.
Exactly.
I have a copy signed by Tom.
You know, I just got
Harry
a royalty
Jaffe.
check just last week on my book, so somebody remembers it.
But do you
Scream
get
City
royalties for Scream City? It's obviously a takeoff on the name Dream City, because when it was in Olney, it was called something else.
Olney. Well, that'd make you scream.
Olney. Oh my God. I've
Yes.
never even heard of
Well,
that.
the fact is, Halloween has become, in the last X number of years, one of the largest celebratory holidays for adults. It used to be little kids, trick or treat and get a piece of candy. Now it's a huge I don't know how millions, billions of dollars industry.
As a matter of fact, Scream City admits no one under 13 years old, so it's obviously intended for adults. It was called Field of
Do
Screams.
they serve alcohol?
It was, I don't know. It was called Field of Screams when it was in Olney. But shouldn't he be getting some royalties?
I would think so,
It's
yes.
named after Scream. Have you been in contact with your attorneys about this?
My book is more of a public service than a.
So you're not expecting any royalties from this? You should. Just
Well,
at least
also-
get in free.
It's important to note that Halloween's my birthday.
Oh, it actually
Yes.
is.
Every year people get dressed up in costumes for me.
Well,
They have parties. It's unbelievable.
And what do they dress as?
Lots of different things.
well,
Lots of
I guess a
different
lot of people
Longest
say-
serving councilman. Before he says it today, longest
In
serving
history.
councilman in
In
history. It's
history.
not the history's not that long.
I know,
You
but
make
so
it's like 50 or 60 years of history.
Well,
Anyway.
nonetheless, it's true.
As staffer for former Mayor Vincent Gray, you may or may not remember Reuben Charles
I
was
do.
charged by a grand jury with failing to file tax returns. He could face up to 2 years in prison for not filing tax returns for 2010 and 2011. It's not the first brush he had with the law over taxes. Apparently, between 2003 and 2006, he didn't file returns either. But it all causes us to remember the Vincent Gray campaign and the ongoing investigation that doesn't seem to be ever ending, in which charges have not been brought against the former mayor and council member. But now it looks like he's seeking to revive his political career.
Reuben Charles.
Vincent Gray.
I was going to say Reuben Charles was in line to become the chief of staff in the Gray administration, and there were questions about money raised and a lot of those
Money
other
owed,
things.
yes.
But now, for those who follow politics, there was a little story in the Post today that Vincent Gray is thinking about running for the council, either at large or Ward 7 against Yvette Alexander next year. This has been going around the political circuit in Washington for 5 or 6 months, and it's true. He has met with people, and maybe Jack Evans knows more about this than I do, but he's met with people. He's very bitter about his loss to Muriel Bowser last year. Very bitter that the prosecutors indicted Jeffrey Thompson, the main money bags for the shadow campaign, just a month before the primary last year. And he's looking at maybe reviving his career. But still above his head is this federal investigation about whether he's going to face charges in the shadow campaign. So, of course, he's talking about running, but whether he will or not, he won't say publicly. But he's telling a lot of people he's upset, and he is thinking about reviving his campaign.
And
Mr.
obviously,
Evans?
he's probably upset about the fact that he has not been indicted or charged with anything, despite the fact that the investigation seems to have been going on for at least the past 4 years or so. And he probably is thinking, okay, let me put it before the voters. Let me
No,
see
that's
what
not
they
going to
think.
happen. the investigation continues, but if he expresses innocence, I have done nothing wrong, all of this stuff is a lie, a lie, a lie. But he's told us what he didn't do, but he will not tell us. As detailed as he is on so many subjects and so many things he did well as mayor, very well, when it comes to his campaign, he won't tell us what he did during his campaign. So that undercuts the complaint.
Well, if he is running for office, Jack Evans, I'm sure that question will get asked a lot, and he's going to probably continue to say he did nothing wrong, and he's going to say, well, hey, let the voters decide.
Yeah, I think so. I don't know what Vince's plans are. I do, and have said it many times, believe Vince really got the shaft. I mean, really, they should have brought a case if they had one, or dropped the case if they didn't. But clearly, to be 4 or 5 years now down the road and nothing happened is so unfair to Vince. Vince is a very good candidate. If he runs, I think he would be formidable, whether it be in Ward 7 or at large. He was a great council member, a great chairman, and a good mayor. So, and remains a friend. I just had lunch with him about a month ago. We did not discuss whether he was going to run for office or not, but I think it would be very interesting if he makes that decision.
And when we asked the prosecutor's office, what's up? They say the investigation is continuing.
Yes,
I have that burned on my brain. But even with the indictment of Reuben Charles, the indictment itself makes no mention of the broad investigation. But the statement, the press release put out by the U.S. Attorney's Office says this is the 8th charge brought in the ongoing larger investigation into 2010.
Yeah.
Well, another council member who got convicted and served time may be looking for a revival of a political career. Former council chair Kwame Brown.
Well, there was an announcement that there was going to be a committee on an anti-crime meeting on Nanny Helen Burroughs Avenue last night, but we sent a reporter and a photographer, and Kwame Brown and Vince Gray neither showed up. They were on the poster announcing this meeting, but neither showed up last night. Kwame Brown has, in fact, talked to people about whether he can revive his career. He has not gotten an overwhelming response. I think Gray would be in a better position to do it than Kwame Brown if the prosecutors don't act against Gray.
Yeah.
Well, Andy Shalal's career so far has consisted of a failed run for mayor, but now now it looks as if the owner of Busboys and Poets is going to be running at large. And if he does run at large, he will run against someone he ran against in the campaign for mayor, known as VO, Vincent Orange.
Well, true, but he's going to, tonight there's the 10th anniversary of Busboys and Poets. It's out at the Monroe Street Market near Catholic University. One of the speakers at this 10th anniversary is Mayor Muriel Bowser.
There you go.
Andy Shalal ran an aggressive campaign as a first-time candidate. His most famous quote, as far as I'm concerned, is when he stood over in Anacostia, east of the Anacostia River, and said all those building cranes look a lot different over there than they do in downtown Washington, where most of them are. And he said more economic development has got to go east of the river. I think Muriel Bowser's taking action on that.
Yep.
But Andy, I think, is rested. He got really tired during the mayor's race. It's a tough thing to do. Jack, you know this, having done it twice.
Yes.
But he would be a formidable candidate also.
Yeah. But Vince Orange is as well. Vince is the incumbent and has started already, is working hard out there and has a track record. So Vince is, I think, would be a formidable candidate to try and beat.
And just to be clear, Andy Shalal has not, he said he's looking at the race. He could run in the Democratic primary. He could run it as an independent in November. He'd have to face David Grasso.
Yeah, exactly. So
major national figures from past controversy will also be there tonight. Angela Davis and Bill Ayers. If you don't know who they are, look them up. We don't have time to discuss it here.
Angela Davis.
Big news for Metro. It's something of an alphabet soup of acronyms, but the National Transportation Safety Board, or NTSB, has recommended putting Metro under the oversight of the Federal Railroad Administration. Well, I was going to ask you, Jack Evans, to remind us of how Metro is overseen now and what this would mean for Metro, and do you think it will help address the safety and reliable issues that plague the system? But there's a rumor going around that there is a new manager who will be coming on board for Metro at some point in the near future. Can you pinpoint that more specifically than the near future?
Well, I can give you the general answer. I am one of the 4 people who are interviewing candidates for general manager. We have had some interviews. We have a couple more to go. We're hoping to get this wrapped up sometime in early to mid-November, and we will get that done.
You had 3 candidates earlier this year, all of whom dropped out as their names started listing out into the public. The search committee of 4 has to report to the full board, and then the full board votes. How much time does that take? How quickly do you have to have a nominee for the board and its bureaucratic morass to meet, come together, discuss, and then vote, and then the person takes over?
Well, as I said, we're hoping to have the interviews wrapped up next week, have a recommendation of maybe 2 candidates, get to the board mid to late October, and have the board make a selection of that one candidate, and then sometime in early to mid-November to vote on it.
You know, that person would come
immediately.
Be in place in office in December, be a Christmas present to the weary commuters.
Yes. So and it's really important, and it's the candidates are all very good, and it's important we get a general manager in place. And then move forward. And to your
well, the NTSB thinks it's important that you get the Federal Railroad Administration in there to provide oversight for Metro. They say it shouldn't be treated like a local system. It's really a commuter railroad.
Well, this is my observation on that. When things go wrong, as they have at Metro, everybody wants to get a piece of the action. So you have the NTSB, you have many Congress people, you have the governors, all telling me what I already know. And I say I'm on the board. I am now on the executive committee. I am chairman of the finance committee. I've only been there 8 months. And
second time around.
Time around, yeah. I was there 10 years back in the 90s. And we are keenly aware at Metro of what the problems are. On the rail side, where the breakdowns are. On the finance side, the huge problems we have there. So the last thing I need is someone to come in and tell me that we have problems. We obviously know that. The FTA, the railroad thing they're talking about, if Congress wants to do these things, they're certainly empowered to do it. But you all both know what happens. They send letters, staff people send letters from the Congress that we have to take valuable time responding to. We've already done it 4 or 5 times. We can continue to do it. But here's what I would request that all of those people who want to be the overseers do. Currently, the Federal Transit Administration has $150 million of Metro's money that they won't give us because the proper forms, timesheets, believe it or not, were not filed back in 2009, 10, and 11. I would ask the senators, the Congress people, the governors to go to the FTA and give me my money, because I could certainly use that $150 million. That would be a constructive thing to do. Send me more letters about what's wrong with Metro. That's just a waste of time.
Well, this is Washington. You know, we think a layer of bureaucracy is much more important than $150 million.
When you have the bureaucracy of Metro, I mean, isn't the Transportation Oversight Committee? It's part of Metro. It's directed to oversee the safety of Metro.
Sure.
And it's the one that NTSB says is not doing its job and not getting the board to fix repairs, emergency repairs that were cited back in 2009 when we had the terrible Metro crash. So it does seem to me, because I've talked on this show many times about how Metro is stuck in its own morass, its own bureaucracy. Whether it's the management or the union or contracts or who can do what, when, where, and how, is that it needs someone to kind of blow up. What can be done to streamline the process so that let's don't recite the problems, but let's see we can get solutions.
Yeah,
and maybe get the federal government to more money in because of the federal workers who ride it. But where's the solution-oriented move there?
And I think it comes with the general manager and the new board that you have. You have a very energized board at Metro that wasn't there 8 months ago. And secondly, in interviewing general managers, what I'm looking for is someone who is going to be proactive and instill in Metro and the employees, who are generally good employees, that sense of we want to come to work and get it done right. And that's what's missing over there, Tom. And getting a new general manager who can bring that expertise in how to run this system and how to run a big organization is going to be critical. And I think we have some good candidates who are going to be able to do that.
Are these people that you've talked to and you've said, well, your name might leak out in the process? Will you quit and run to your current job if your name is leaked to the press? Have you been demanding, or have these 2 candidates or 3 candidates demanded that their names be kept secret?
We haven't had that. That has not posed to be a problem in the interviews that we've had. So I believe we will get to the point where we will have somebody new, and then really, again, what I've seen at Metro, the problem is Metro is not proactive, they're reactive. You find a problem for me, I'll get it fixed, but I'm not going out and finding the problems. I'm not going out and fixing the system. That's problem number one. But number two, again, and this is what I'm going to focus on once I get a general manager, is this system needs a dedicated funding source. It needs a dedicated funding source that is going to bring in approximately $2 billion a year for the next 10 years. Again, I challenge the governor, Hogan, the governor, McAuliffe, Senator Mikulski, all the Congress people who are looking into this. Get me a dedicated funding source, and I can fix this system.
Well, there's a wrinkle here because the Inspector General from your jurisdiction, the District of Columbia, has filed an ethics complaint against the chairman of the board you're a member of, Metro Board Chair Mort Downey, saying that there's a conflict of interest, that Mr. Downey has ties to an engineering company that was paid $81 million in recent years to manage Metro. He has kept no secret of it. It's the same company that had a major role in designing Tom's favorite Silver Spring Transit Center and has been sued by Metro. It gets very complicated here, but could federal oversight be the answer to this kind of conflict of interest conundrum?
Well, actually not. And I'm also on the ethics committee at Metro, one of the four members.
Is there any board or committee that you are not a member of?
So is he part of the problem or the solution?
Yeah, really.
I'm starting to bounce.
I'm starting to worry you, but I've only been here 8 months. A year from now, I'll be part of the problem. And that matter has been referred to our general counsel and our ethics officer, who are doing an investigation to determine if any conflict of interest existed between the board chair and the company he was working for at the time. And again, we don't need any federal.
He's not there now.
He is not there now. That's correct.
Which just seems, whether it's unethical or not, the appearance of it is
Sure.
bad. You know, people are told in public
Absolutely.
life, it's not only the things that are illegal or unethical, it's the appearance of,
yes.
and I just, it seems part of the dense structure over at Metro that someone wouldn't say, you know, this is a really dumb way to make money.
It would lead one to believe, if you're chairman of the board at Metro, you might not want to be working for a company that has $300 million of contracts at Metro. I agree.
Right.
The appearance is crazy.
Appearances do matter, and
Yes.
appearing now on a device before you is DC Council Member Jack Evans. He's a Democrat representing Ward 2. You can go to our website, kojoshow.org, to watch the live video stream on which he's appearing, along with Tom Sherwood. He's our resident analyst. He's a reporter for NBC4 and a columnist with the current newspapers. If you have questions for our council member, call 800-433-8850 or send email to kojo@wamu.org. We discussed this with DC's Fire and EMS Chief Gregory Dean on Wednesday, but the residency requirement you have proposed
yes, good.
for some DC government employees, including police, firefighters, and teachers, doesn't seem to be popular with the unions representing those groups. A lot to say the union representatives anyway, so their employees, their members can't afford to live in DC on what they're paid. What's the idea behind this proposal?
Okay. Clearly, they don't understand the bill, or they do, and they're just ignoring it. The bill I introduced was in response to a hearing that Kenyon McDuffie had that went till 3:30 in the morning, that talked about, it was a crime hearing, but much of the discussion was about jobs. District residents, particularly in many parts of the eastern part of our city, need jobs. So what my bill says, and again, keep in mind, this is a beginning of a discussion. It's not a bill that passed. It was a bill that was introduced. What it said is that after January 1st of 2017, anyone hired in our police department, fire department, or in our school system must be a district resident. So they have to be living here already. So it's not that they have to move into the city and find a place to live. They have to be living here already. So it takes away that discussion of, oh, it's too expensive to live in the city. Well, they're already living in the city. But more importantly, it gets district residents in these jobs, and everyone will acknowledge the backbone of communities are firefighters, teachers, and police officers. And if they lived in the city, it would have safer neighborhoods. Right now, I think it's 65 to 80% of those individuals live in a place called Mitchellville. They're all, you know that, and I'm making a little bit of a joke, but they're all in Mitchellville, wherever Mitchellville happens to be. It's in Maryland somewhere.
It's in Prince George's County.
And it sure would be nice if all of those individuals were in our city. But I'm not saying that. I'm not saying they have to move in. I'm saying anybody new we hire is already living in the city.
Congress in the past has stopped the city from having
Constantly.
residency requirements.
Yes.
How can you get this by? I mean,
Well,
Steny
Members
Hoyer in
from
Maryland.
Maryland
and-
and Virginia, they don't want to lose income taxes from.
Well, these
their-
people already live in the city, though. Keep in
Okay.
mind, they already are in the city. They're not in the county and have to move into the city. They're already in the city, and we hire them. Now, again, this is my idea. And if someone has a better idea, then they should bring that up. I was disappointed in the unions in this regard. I give Ed Smith from the firefighters total credit. He called me up and talked about it. I was very disappointed that both Elizabeth Davis and Delroy Burton didn't, who I both know, didn't call me, but actually made, derogatory comments about it. And I
Well,
said,
here's one.
just think about it. It's not something to make a derogatory
Delroy
comment
Burton
about.
told me after you made this proposal, I spoke to him at the union headquarters on Pennsylvania
Yeah.
Avenue Southeast. He said the starting salary of a DC police uniformed DC police officer is about $52,000 a year.
Right.
He says that's fine for a young firefighter, male or female, who doesn't have a family, doesn't have a lot of obligations, is just out of college maybe. That's pretty good for a starting job. He says, but if you have a person who has family members or senior citizens to care for and other family obligations, that salary is not good enough.
Sure.
And so if you're living in the city, it's already hard to live on $50,000 for many people. You're going to ask them to be here, to live in the city, even if they don't have the job, just to apply for the job.
Mhm.
And that's going to be tough on them.
But these
With
are
no housing assistance
Sure.
or anything like that.
And let me take this a step further. I am perfectly willing to look at housing assistance, any kind of assistance to get police officers, firefighters, and teachers in our city.
We already have low-income
We already
housing
have that,
assistance. Could we have workforce housing as part of a
Yes.
development?
And we
Does
could
that
have it
put-
specifically for these categories.
Right.
And we remember we have the first time home buyers assistance as well. So there are plenty of tools at our disposal. But again, what I'm trying to do is we need to get jobs for our residents. This is a starting point to talk. If other people have better ideas, help me out here.
Okay.
But don't always be the person who says, no, we don't want to do that, but I don't have any ideas either.
Jeff DeWitt, I think you know this. Jeff DeWitt, the CFO, that says there's a very important statistic about the city. For decades, it was that 70% of the jobs in the city, government and private, are held by people who live in the suburbs. 70% of them, 30% in the city. He says that number, because of the growth of the city, is now 55-45.
Mhm.
And so we're going to get to the point where maybe most of the jobs are people living in the city. Would this even be necessary?
Yeah, and if we can get to that point, that's helpful. But again, how do we employ the people in our city who are now out of work?
In other words, what's this most you keep speaking of? He's talking all. All right.
All.
Ultimately.
Well, going forward, yes, but and again,
grandfathered in, those who are outside the city don't have to.
they don't
come
have to
in.
move in.
And-
It's new hires in 2017.
Put on your headphones, please, because Elaine,
And I want to
finish your
just say
thought,
this,
please.
this
yes.
is not unique. In most cities in the country, if you work for the government of the city, you have to live in the city, most places.
Here's Elaine in Falls Church, Virginia. Elaine, you're on the air. Go ahead, please.
Thanks. Hi, Jack, and good luck with your efforts on Metro. I think everyone's pulling for you on that.
Thank you.
I'm calling about the Skyland project. I'm sure you remember I've testified in front of your committee several times
Yes.
about it. I represent the small business and property owners. And it's almost 10 years now when the district put $28 million into buying that property. And as far as I know, there's still nothing there. And I've been asking HUD to do oversight, and I'll send you a letter from HUD, but the district has not complied with the HUD regulation that they must comply with the national objective, which would be jobs benefiting the low and moderate income persons. So I think there still needs to be more oversight of Skyland.
Okay, that's a great, we'll bring that up. Economic development is now in the committee of the whole, and the finance part is still in my committee, so we'll take another look at it. It kind of got hung up on the Safeway issue, was my last recollection of that, but we'll see where we are on that.
This is Skyland at Alabama Avenue and Good Hope Road
Yeah.
Southeast.
Right.
This is where Walmart is to put up. Was supposed
We're
to
supposed
put
to
up
put
a
a store.
but there's been some continuing fight over some wall that has to be built before the building can
Yeah.
be built, and that's a lot of money, and they want the city to pay for that, but where does that stand? Because that's
That I don't know where that is.
Okay.
And Walmart, remember there was a non-compete with Safeway
Right.
that is located right there that was preventing the Walmart from being there. So it's very convoluted now. We have to find out where we are. Boy, that's a project that should have been done 10 years ago, and we're still
That's a
struggling
part of the
with
city
it.
that needs the economic
sure does.
development
Let's
that everyone
stay
talks
with
about.
economic development.
Sure
Stadium deals. The big news this week, it looks like the district is moving forward on a deal with DC United for a stadium and will use eminent domain authority to acquire the land, for which they were unable to make a deal with the company that owns it. But some are still asking whether spending money on stadiums, including the Wizards deal for St. E's 2 weeks ago, is a good deal for the district, and will it result in the displacement of current residents?
It's always a good deal. And at least in the District of Columbia, Verizon Center, Convention Center, baseball stadium, enormous successes. And I believe the DC United will be equally as successful when we get that done. And the Wizards practice facility, I really want to stress this. This is not a facility we're building primarily for the Mystics as a home place. It is being built for the Wizards practice facility, and the Mystics will also be there. And I bring that up because people keep saying, well, what happens if the Mystics fold or something of that nature? Again, the Wizards practice facility is what this is. Everything else is going to be a part of that.
Okay,
But for those of you who are Mystics fans, this is where the Mystics home
It
games
is.
will be playing, because there's a big national debate about why it is more attention is not being paid to women's professional basketball.
in Southwest, where the DC United Stadium is going to go, first of all, there's no one who lives there. So this is not a really displacement of people.
Correct.
There are
This
some
is
public
Buzzard
housing
Point.
projects close by.
James Creek and everything's right around there, but yes.
Syfax
But nobody's
Garden,
there. Exactly.
and no one's planning on tearing those down.
No.
They might be some of them might be rehabbed, but they're not be torn out. But the problem for the land, the deadline for the city to get all the land under its control so that the stadium can be built within the next 2 years has passed. And now the city is going into court with eminent domain to seize essentially 2 acres of land that Chip Ackridge, the developer, has.
Yes.
But you were telling me the other day that this court action won't delay the progress because you'll get control of the land. The only doubt will be very quickly. The only doubt will be how much you're going to pay for.
That's exactly right, Tom. Under eminent domain, the jurisdiction, the district in this case, and same as a baseball stadium, gets the
14
land.
acres were seized by eminent domain to build the baseball stadium.
So we will build the stadium. We built the baseball stadium. We're still settling with the people whose land we took by eminent domain, which why in an eminent domain situation, it behooves the person who owns the land to settle, because with the Ackridge situation, they'll get their money, whatever the court determines it to be, but it'll be a long way down the road. But the city gets the land and we can build the stadium.
The Post reported earlier this week on land in Shaw that the district is selling for substantially less than it's supposedly worth. You and your colleagues saw a report about this discrepancy, and I guess questions have been raised about whether the Bowser administration is able to negotiate with big developers and get a fair deal for the district. It was given at a cost of $400,000 when it was assessed at $27.6 million, but that has a lot to do with exactly what goes up there.
Absolutely.
And what goes up there, according to the agreement, is to provide at least 100 affordable housing units, and that's why the cost was lowered for the developer. What do you think about the deal, and how do we enforce the agreement to have 100 affordable housing units?
Okay. The deal is a good deal. How it starts out, if you had the highest and best use building on that property, which would be a commercial / market rate residential building, it's worth $25 million. We are putting a lot of affordable units on. I think it's even more than 100 affordable. It's 100 at 30%.
Yep.
There may be another 30 units at 50%, a grocery store, and there are environmental cleanup problems on the site, all of which brings that $25 million down to $400,000. The city has made a decision, and I agree with this, to put affordable housing and low-income housing in the center of the city on some of its most valuable pieces of property, because we want to have a diverse city. If you want to do that, you got to pay for it. And that's what we're doing. We could make a decision to build the highest best use and take the money from that and build twice as many affordable units elsewhere in the city. But then you lose the diversity. So that's a decision that we have
On
made.
that same
See, my question about enforcement is the developer says we're going to do this. There's an agreement. The developer doesn't do that. What happens to the
In this
developer?
they will. In this they will, because we know what the affordable units are. They're going to get built there.
If that's the case,
Absolutely.
why doesn't the city buy Museum Square and keep 300 citizens in Museum Square down at 4th and K or somewhere like
Yep,
that.
4th and K.
Yeah. Well,
All
we
right.
may end up doing that.
But it's, I mean, they had a demonstration. The
Sure.
Section 8, the federal subsidy housing vouchers for the building itself
Yep.
are now expired because the company didn't ask for them a year ago to be continued. Now they're all going to get individual vouchers where they'll have to move and then find their own housing somewhere. It's a real mess.
Yep.
And there have been demonstrations in the street. People have stopped me just in town and say, what is the city going to do about these low-income people who really have no place to move?
Yeah, and the city, through the Housing Production Trust Fund, if you chose to do that, could buy that building from the developer or the owner.
The Bush
And,
Company from Virginia put a $250 million
And that's the
price
problem.
tag on it.
You know, the price is so high, and so we really can't afford to buy it for that amount. So it's something we're looking at, because that used to be in my ward, as did most things in the city, and it's something that we would really like to maintain, particularly for the community that's there. That's been there for years. It was out of Chinatown that many of the people moved there, actually.
Right.
There are activists I've been talking to say that there's been some short-term agreements in which HUD will provide vouchers so that the current residents there can meet the market rate rents that will be put up, but that's not a long-term
No, that's
solution.
not a long-term solution at all. Long-term solution, keep the people where they
But
are.
there's another issue you've been in the middle of that Tom in Washington, D.C. would like to talk to you about. Tom, you're on the air. Go ahead, please. I should call you Tom, too.
Thank you. Hey, this is Tom Bros from CrossFit DC. Kojo, I was lucky enough to be on your show a couple of months ago.
Yep. Good to
Yeah, and we just wanted to reach out and thank Councilman Evans for his work on pulling back the unnecessary licensing of fitness trainers in the district. So that's something that we really appreciate as a small business trying to help DC maintain its standard as the fittest city in the country.
Yes, Tom, they indeed pulled back because there was a point at which there was a unanimous approval of this by the council. And then, Tom, you came and accused several of the athletic drink manufacturers of being behind all of this. The council.
Well, yes, and that's turning out to be more and more evidence of that. Yeah.
Well,
It
Jack
was
Evans,
just-
why did you guys walk away from
Well,
this?
it's just crazy. You know, again, it was in the Budget Support Act, something about under Obamacare. Every jurisdiction in America at some point is going to have some regulation for this industry in order to get reimbursed by insurance. So that was kind of the camel's nose under the tent. What happened then is this regulatory body that we have came up with these regulations that were so onerous and crazy. So having gotten notified by the industry about what we were about to do, I introduced legislation to just terminate this thing, because we should wait till other states, everybody else gets their act together on how they're going to approach this, and then do what they're doing, not be the first in the nation with the most strict regulations in an industry that doesn't need to be regulated in the first place.
On that same token,
Allow me to interrupt because we're almost at an end of this segment. Security, would you come and remove Jack Evans from this house?
it's going to take
Nowhere else. I took the day off. I'm here.
one of our a couple of quick questions. We're out of time, because one of the big businesses in town are bars and restaurants.
Yes.
And now that some rule that they also have to monitor the noise, actually have machines that monitor the noise of their establishments and report on a regular basis. They are saying this is also onerous for all the hundreds, thousands of retail establishments. Are you up to speed on that?
Yes, and this is the Vincent Orange's bill. I don't know that it's passed yet, has it?
Well,
I think he had a
in the
hearing
works.
on
It's
it
in
and
the
things
works.
of that nature, and then he's going to come back. But yes, again, the government has to be so careful, you know, overreaching. Particularly, we say we support small business, and then we put in regulations that make it hard as a business to survive. So the one that Vincent does, I think what he's doing is rethinking that.
Got to ask you about the Washington.
Our
Redskins.
next guest is former
While
Maryland
you're
Lieutenant.
No, we
Very
got to
quick.
talk about the Redskins.
Mayor, every mayor since Anthony
Redskins,
Williams has wanted the team to come back to
Yes,
town,
and we do.
build its own stadium.
Yes.
Where is that now? The name is, I realize the name is
Putting the
is
name
an issue.
aside as an issue.
The mayor told us on this show 2 weeks ago that there's plenty of room over on that part of town for everything the residents want, not oceans of parking, and to have a team there. And some people are even thinking to put the Wizards' new arena, close Verizon Center, and put a new arena out there. Is that all going to happen?
With the as far as the Redskins football stadium, the RFK site where the RFK stadium currently sits is the best spot in the metropolitan region for a football stadium because of the access and the parking and the metro and the roads that lead into it. And she is absolutely right. We looked at a diagram of that whole area. You can have parks, you can have practice fields, a hotel, retail, housing. everything there. I don't particularly like the idea of moving the Verizon Center there because we've talked about this. I like it where it is because of the energy it brings to downtown.
Former Maryland Lieutenant Governor Anthony Brown has served in the military, knows martial arts, and is dragging Jack Evans from his chair even as we speak. Jack Evans, thank you very much for joining us. Jack Evans is a Democrat representing Ward 2. It's the Politics Hour. Tom Sherwood is our resident analyst. He's a reporter for NBC4 and a columnist with the current newspapers. As former Lieutenant Governor takes his seat, Tom Sherwood, the race in another congressional district in Maryland, the 8th District, is heating up. The race to represent Chris Van Hollen, who is running for the Senate, has got Jamie Raskin, Anna Sol Gutierrez, Kumar Barve, Kathleen Matthews, Will Jawando, David Anderson. What can you say about this, if anything?
I love democracy. I love campaigns, and it's great. It's a lot easier to cover campaigns than it is to run them. It's I've heard from any number of candidates, including the one sitting to my left here.
Exactly.
This is an exciting time for Maryland politics, both with Van Hollen moving towards running for the Senate, Donna Edwards giving her seat to run for the Senate. The metropolitan area, with all its issues, is going to have some new members of Congress who all have to work together for the region, the 6 million people who live in the region.
And
so
Anthony Brown would like to be one of them. He's the former Lieutenant Governor of Maryland. He's a Democrat running in Maryland's 4th Congressional District. He joins us in studio. Anthony Brown, welcome. Thank you for joining.
It's great to be back, Kojo. Tom, nice to be here with you.
Let's start with the news. Another school shooting, this time at a community college in Oregon, that's led President Obama and others to talk gun legislation again. We've heard this talk before. What do you think is needed in Congress to address these now regular tragedies?
First of all, let me just say that, my heart and certainly prayers go out to the victims, their families, the community in Oregon, as well as families and victims across this country over the last several years who have experienced time and time again this senseless killing. It's hard to believe, and I don't think people really appreciate that, in this country in the last year, and you saw the numbers today, I think we're in the Washington Post, 294 mass shootings. A mass shooting is a shooting that involves 4 or more people. 10,000 people killed in this country this year by gun-related killings. Now, I spent a year in Iraq. That number rivals the number of civilian deaths in Iraq due to violence during the period that I was in Iraq.
What do you do about it? I mean, the president has expressed frustration, anger, almost thrown up his hands and says, our sympathies and our thoughts and prayers are not enough. But and every time this happens, and I suspect it'll happen this time, there will be this outrage that you just expressed, and then nothing happens.
So what we did in Maryland, an outrage of what happened at Sandy Hook, we took action. We were the only state that was really able to take some real action. I led a number of town hall meetings. Believe me, there are folks that were opposed to what we did. Most people supported, and this is what we did.
Restrictions.
And we tightened the restrictions. And now in Maryland, getting a gun is more like getting a driver's license. You have to have safety training. We do a background check, a criminal background check.
Same kind of rules.
That's right. And not every state does. Yeah. And if you don't have it in every state, then what happens is someone will go to another state with lax rules and regulations.
Virginia.
Right, like Virginia, and acquire a gun and use it for unlawful purposes. The problem when you're not regulating that by permit is you get a lot of straw purchases. And you'll have someone that'll go in, buy a gun for someone that shouldn't have it and hand it over to them.
You're running for the congressional seat that Donna Edwards is giving up to run for the Senate. You're coming back into the political game after your race for governor. Why did you lose to Larry Hogan in a state that's 2-1 Democratic, and you lost by about 4 or 5 percentage points? Why did you lose that race? You had every Democrat virtually in the state supporting your campaign.
There's a turnout issue. And Maryland wasn't immune from low voter turnout. Last year across the country, we saw turnout at a rate that we didn't see since World War II, when millions of men and women were in the Pacific and in Europe fighting on 2 fronts of World War. And last year, voter participation was at an all-time low. We saw that not only in Maryland, we saw
30,000 voters in your Prince George's County didn't show up to vote in that race as they had 4 years earlier.
Right. Low voter turnout. And
some people said that you were too dull, that you were too cautious. You were not, I mean, let's read my notes here, that you were just too no passion on the issues, too cautious, too bland, insular campaign that was tightly controlled where you even read your name at hearings. You've already shown more passion in the last 2 minutes than I remember seeing the entire year.
And I had to use martial arts to get Evans out of here, right?
And you came by yourself. There's no entourage.
Let me
There's
say,
not 4 or 5 people like laying leaves in front of you.
Let me just say this.
I mean,
right now, I'm running in the 4th Congressional District. And last year, I did very well in the 4th Congressional District. Even the general election, I took 70% of the vote, over 80% in the primary. But more importantly, for the last several months since I've announced my candidacy, I've knocked on
almost 7 months.
Almost 7. I've knocked on over 2,000 doors, talking to voters about issues that matter. People say, you know what? I'm really glad that you're running because we know about your commitment to Maryland. We know that you love this country, and we understand that there's unfinished business.
You may have already answered my next question because you've raised more money than your nearest rivals so far, but that loss had to be a painful loss for you. What made you decide to get in the game again?
Because there's
knowing that there's the possibility of losing.
Unfinished business. And, I think, look, and no matter what you do in life, right? I'm a lawyer. Sometimes you don't have the right outcome in a case, but you don't walk away from your clients.
And you had 16 years of public service. So that's kind of your career more than being a lawyer.
Yeah, well, also, I mean, you could be a doctor and not have a good outcome with a patient, but you don't walk away from the many other patients that you can do good for. You could be a teacher in a classroom and perhaps a student does so well, but you don't walk away from a classroom full of students who need your service, your experience.
If you have questions or comments for our guest, he is Anthony Brown, Maryland's former lieutenant governor. He's a Democrat running in Maryland's 4th Congressional District. Call us at 800-433-8850. Go to our website, kojoshow.org. Watch the live video stream there or send email to kojo@wamu.org.
When you announced back in March, Glenn Ivey, the former state's attorney, and also announced that he's considered a serious opponent. I think everyone would agree with that. You were asked what's the difference, and you said back 7 months ago that it was too early to, quote, draw contrast, that you would do so down the road. We're still a significant away from the April primary, but what's your contrast with Glenn Ivey?
Well, look, the voters will draw the contrast between candidates. Let me tell you a little bit about what I offer as a candidate. Certainly a record.
But he doesn't?
No, this is what I offer. And what I offer is a record of experience in both the executive branch, the legislative branch, military service, the private sector, and the public sector. There's no other candidate, and I'm not focusing on one candidate. There's no other candidate that brings that breadth of experience. And when you go to Congress, you need to have an understanding of the issues, whether it's, how do we improve education? How do we improve public safety? But you also have to understand the important role of Congress, which is constituent service. And that's going to be my top priority, constituent service. You need to understand how government works. And I've had the opportunity to spend 8 years as lieutenant governor. So when constituents come and say, hey, look, we need help getting our Veterans Administration benefits, I know what needs to be done. When seniors come and say, listen, I need help with my Social Security benefits, I know what to do. When families come and say, hey, you know what, we're having difficulty with student loans and refinancing and things like that, I know what to do because I've been in the public sector serving people.
The difference is in the General Assembly of Maryland, in the executive offices, there are Democrats in charge. The House is going to be Republican again. The leaders of those committees, the decision makers, are going to be Republicans.
And what you need to do,
and you'll be a freshman,
right? And what you need to do is you need to certainly build relationships, find consensus and common ground. There are a number of issues over the last several years that I've had the opportunity to work on where I've had to develop consensus. I remember when my cousin Kathy was killed by her estranged boyfriend as a victim of domestic violence, her estranged boyfriend. I went to the advocates in the domestic violence community and I said, hey, we got to do something. And they knew that we had to do something. They said, we want you to help us give judges the authority to order abusers to surrender firearms. They'd been working on that for 10 years. No consensus in Maryland around that. I led that effort, worked with like-minded people, both Democrats, Republicans, from rural communities, urban communities, and suburban communities, and we finally got it passed.
You mentioned issues. I wanted to get to some of those by way of this caller, Tom in College Park, who has a very specific issue he'd like to raise. Tom, you're on the air. Go ahead, please. Tom 3.
Hi, Mr. Brown. Actually, I'm a college student in College Park, and I'm wondering about your plan with student loans, and I'm kind of worried about beginning my career with the college debt that I have. So my question is, how are you going to keep college affordable and keep students who need financial aid from going into debt?
Sure. So, Tom, one of the things that we did, and I'll get to what we need to do, is we made college a little bit more affordable in Maryland by holding tuition flat for a number of years. And I'm sure that perhaps your parents or you appreciate that. But going forward, there are some things that we need to do. For example, we ought to limit student loan repayment to a percentage of your income. If you make a lot of money, great. If you're not doing so well, or you're not earning an income right out of college, then you shouldn't be paying back your student loan. Number one. Number two is we need to ensure
that's
that
important, because you can't bankrupt yourself out of the student loans. If you even declare bankruptcy, you still owe the
that's
student
right.
loans.
So we should tie it to a percentage of income. The other thing we should do is universities and colleges have to have skin in the game. Some colleges and universities have a higher default rate than others. And if your default rate at your university or your college is higher than the average, then you ought to be helping those students to repay the student loans. So those are some of the things. Pell Grant, we need to do year-round 12-month Pell Grants. Pell Grants do a pretty good job at covering the cost of most community college tuition. We should increase it so it helps some of the students at more expensive schools. So those are some of the things that I'll be focusing on to make
Tom 3, thank you very much for your call. We return to Tom 1.
I suspect you support the president's idea of tuition for junior colleges or
yes,
community colleges.
I was chairman of the Prince George's Board of Trustees, the community college. I think tuition-free community college is the way to go. Garrett County in Maryland does it. We should find ways, and I'll be working in Congress to incentivize state and local government to provide tuition-free community college.
Back to the campaign and the politics hour. Rashern Baker, the county executive, Prince George's County, has endorsed your opponent, Glenn Ivey. In the race for governor, in terms of turnout, Rashern Baker, who himself some think will run for governor, in that governor's race last year, he never endorsed. He didn't endorse you, the home county guy. He didn't endorse
Jolene Ivey, Glenn Ivey's wife.
Jolene Ivey's wife. Why? What's it with you and Rashern Baker? Why didn't he support you?
Actually, Tom, what I'm focused on is what's up with me and the voters. And I'm spending a lot of time. Hold on, Tom. I'm spending a lot.
I know you don't want to be negative.
No,
I know you
look,
don't want to say anything negative.
Look, what the voters want to hear, and I imagine on this show as well, your listeners want to know, hey, what are you going to do, Anthony, when you're in Congress? Are you going to continue to work on early childhood education like you did as lieutenant governor and expand it to more and more 4-year-olds? Are you going to continue to fight for the reauthorization of the Violence Against Women Act to help victims of domestic violence like you did as lieutenant governor? That's what they're focusing on. Or do you still think, Anthony, that investments in public infrastructure, because you fought for that as lieutenant governor, to create jobs, and support economies, are you going to continue to fight for those as a member of Congress? And the answer is yes. Why am I running? Because there's unfinished business. I'm not running against the county executive. I'm not running against a particular individual. I am running for Maryland and the voters, residents, families, and businesses of the 4th Congressional
But the whole
District.
campaign can't be a positive campaign brochure. You've got to contrast yourself with the other candidates. I mean,
what voters want to know, look, Tom, join me on any weekend. What voters want to know, and when I'm on the doors, they want to know. When I ask voters, what is important to you as you consider who you're going to send to Washington to advocate for this community? And they don't talk about endorsements. They don't talk. What they ask and talk about are good schools, safe neighborhoods.
But I suspect one of the things that fascinates people like Tom and me are that a number of the people in this race, including Glenn Ivey, are people who have worked with one another for many, many years, known one another. And so they're very tangled relationships here that those of us in the media are going to try to untangle for our readers and our listeners. How does that affect this campaign? The fact that
so you want me to
all
do
of
the
you
untangling for you?
Yeah. All right, let's get another issue here. Here's Paco in College Park, Maryland. Paco, your turn.
Hi, Mr. Brown. My name is Paco, and I'm from College Park, Maryland. And I was just wondering, do you support raising minimum wage?
Absolutely, Paco. I support raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour. As you may know, I led the floor fight in the Maryland General Assembly when Governor Ehrlich vetoed the minimum wage, and we overrode the veto. I worked with members of the General Assembly and labor, small business owners to raise the minimum wage in 2014 in Maryland to $10.10. We're the first state in the nation, Maryland, to pass a living wage. And I also support expanding the prevailing wage every opportunity that I could. So I do support increase the minimum wage. I think it's not only good for the pocketbook of the wage earner and their family, but I also think it's good for the local business community because most of those increased wages go into local businesses.
We're down
Okay,
to
very,
2
very
minutes.
quickly, the federal minimum wage is $7.25. You support 15. How quickly would you get to it?
As quick as we can, although
Well,
I realize it couldn't happen in 1 year.
So you'd have to phase it in.
Yeah, that's right. You got to phase it in. We phase it in Maryland. I would have liked to have seen the phase in to 1010 a little bit quicker, but you've got to phase that in. You can't go from 7 and change to 15 in 1 year.
In your governor's race, you had a $500,000 debt to labor unions. Have you made progress in paying that off?
Yes, and I'll certainly satisfy that.
The good news for you is Barbara McCoskey and Steny Hoyer both ran statewide campaigns and lost, and then got elected to Congress.
That's good news.
Barbara McCoskey in 1974, the Senate.
Well,
Steny Hoyer ran for lieutenant governor and lost.
And let me say, we are going to miss Barbara McCoskey. She's done an outstanding job, advocating for veterans and seniors and Marylanders across the state and the country, Americans, and we're going to miss her. She's done a great job.
October 15th is the next the filing deadline. You're going to have to report a lot of money or little money?
Well, we're doing better than second quarter. We're tallying the numbers now. And but more importantly, or just as important, is the grassroots momentum on this campaign.
Okay. I'll come out and walk around with you one day.
Please.
Purple Line, Senator McCoskey says that spending caps being pushed by Republicans in Congress risk derailing plans for the light rail line. In 30 seconds or less, talk about the prospects for that project.
We need the Purple Line. That's why I led the effort to establish a public-private partnership framework in Maryland to help deliver that project with private financing. I do have concerns in the way that the governor has narrowed the scope of the project.
Cut $500 million.
Yeah, so I have concerns. He didn't take it off the table like the red line, but I do have concerns.
Anthony Brown is Maryland's former lieutenant governor. He's a Democrat running in Maryland's 4th congressional district, and I agree with Tom. The passion level is up here. Thank you for joining us. Good luck to you.
Thank you.
Tom Sherwood is our resident analyst. He's a reporter at NBC4 and a columnist with the current newspapers. Thank you all for listening. I'm Kojo Nnamdi. Coming up Monday on